We are back on It's Always Game Day in Cincinnati. Lindsay Patterson, Mike Santagata here. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing pretty great. I went to a Guardians, not a baseball podcast,
Okay.
um, but went to a Guardians game at their field. It was great. It was great. They won 2-1. There was a suicide squeeze in 2024. Loved it. I haven't been to a baseball game in a year, so I mostly just go to PNC because that's what's close to me. But never been to another ballpark, so I went to Progressive Field and had a good time. Have you been? Are
I've
you
never
just a
been to
great
Progressive
American person?
Field. I've been to like a Cleveland Browns game, but I've never been to Progressive Field.
Wow,
Um,
wrong ballpark.
yeah, yeah. Believe me,
I
I
had
would
to
have.
pick one.
If you were to choose between going to the Browns Stadium or Progressive, I'm sure I would have rather have gone to Progressive. But yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you were out there, had fun. Baseball season's going to wrap up soon, and it's going to be fully NFL and college football. For the Cincinnati Bengals, they got preseason game number 1 under their belt. We'll get to that in just a moment. But some of the headlines today, I will start with an announcement from the Cincinnati Bengals. They said Jeff Gunter is going to retire. He's on the retire list, which was pretty surprising, I think, for a lot of people. He was getting some reps, a lot of reps in the offseason, and maybe thought he'd be like the last man on the roster, was able to produce in the preseason game. And, just a bummer of a development. And hopefully Jeff is doing good. But, any thoughts on that news?
No, he wasn't facing like the highest end talent with the Bucks third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth string guys, but he did really well. I thought. I mean, I thought he was. And what Cedric Johnson's the other one? I think he was their most recent day three
Mm-hmm.
defensive end. Yeah, I thought both of them did good. I was like, ooh, hard to pick between those two after one game who I would keep. Um, but I guess Jeff is going to retire, so
Yeah.
never got his shot, but I think both preseasons he played well. Feel like, I mean, whenever you're the back of the roster type guy, it's probably hard to keep that going. I think he could have been like a Khalid Kareem, where he could be a rotational guy for a couple of years. And Kareem had one of my favorite all time plays when Drew Lock ran the zone read and Kareem ripped the ball out of his hands. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Just like it was in the low red zone. They were within the 10-yard line, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And he just comes up to him and just steals it like it's a basketball. I was like, okay, cool. Just rips it right out of his hands and starts running the other way. I had never seen that before at the NFL level. Um, but that's a different player. Anyway, I thought Jeff played well every time he was in the preseason. Always seemed to be competing for that last defensive end spot. This seemed like it could have been the year with Cam Sample being out already. He has really had to just compete with Cedric to win that job. But now it looks like Cedric Johnson has the inside track to make that move. I assume the Bengals will respond if they haven't already with signing some type of UDFA or vet or what's Noah Spence doing? You know, they need a
Yeah.
preseason body. He's probably out there.
Yeah, you definitely want to bring in another body. It might be defensive tackle, might be offensive line, or it could be a defensive end. So we'll see what that looks like for the Cincinnati Bengals. They did have Wednesday off, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. Kind of nice to have Wednesday off after just all of the news this week. And that's not even the orange pants announcement. We can get to that later. But Jamar Chase is obviously going to be the center of attention for the Cincinnati Bengals right now, kind of going into even backing it all the way up to the offseason program. He wasn't here for voluntary stuff. He did show up for the mandatory camp. Didn't really participate with the team as a whole, but he was there. Training camp, we heard from Zach Taylor. Jamar Chase was there. He was at the preseason game on the sidelines with Zach Taylor. He's been at every single training camp practice until Tuesday afternoon. He wasn't there. And Zach Taylor talked to the media after camp was over, and he said he had a couple notes. BJ Hill was gone because he just had a baby. Congratulations to a friend of the show, BJ Hill. Also made the announcement with Jake Browning going to be out for a few weeks for some time to be determined on when he returns. And Jamar Chase is day to day, and that felt a little bit different from Jamar Chase and Zach Taylor have an understanding, and they probably do. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes and what's going to happen. And if Jamar Chase is going to the preseason game number 2, does it really matter if he's not participating? Will he travel to Chicago? They have their joint practice on Thursday. What does that really mean? I will say right now, before I get your take on the situation, I'm not on panic mode yet as far as Jamar Chase and a hold in or a holdout or anything like that. There's still 2 preseason games to go, and I truly do believe that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase need just a few practices and they'll be right back to where they were. And I'm sure, additional reps are going to help in regular season and practice and all of that. And I expect Jamar Chase to be there for regular season, even if he doesn't get his contract extension this offseason. 2, the Cincinnati Bengals, they will extend Jamar Chase. I feel very confident in saying that. I can't guarantee it's going to happen this offseason. The Bengals, they aren't in any rush because he's under contract for 2 more years. I still expect the Cincinnati Bengals to extend Jamar Chase next August, maybe next September 1st, before they go to their week 1 regular season game. So they're not in a rush. Jamar Chase wants to get paid. I don't blame him. Injuries happen and he's going to make a whole lot of money. But for me, I'm kind of just like right in the middle of the whole entire situation. I don't blame Jamar Chase if he doesn't want to participate. I don't really blame the Bengals for not rushing it. I'd like it to get done before the season starts, but I kind of just understand where both sides sit right now.
Yeah, for me, I lean very much player. In this case, though, it's like, man, that's early, right? Like, he still has the 5th-year option next year, if I'm not mistaken, and then also has a possible franchise tag after that. I'm like, well, you're kind of, I mean, at worst, you're here for 3 years against your will. So I don't know. And you never like to see a player unhappy. I think this was one of those things that we just kind of ignored throughout the offseason. And maybe it was his agent or his camp or whatever kind of leaking those things to Schefter that he's unhappy with his pay. Right. Because I know Schefter was on it yelling about it because I saw a lot of people yelling back at him and like sometimes deserved. But this was one of those like maybe one of those like maybe you don't like Adam Schefter, like a boy who cried wolf situation where it's like, you don't like the way he talks about the Bengals, doesn't like the way he talks about it. It's like, wow, man, there was a little bit of actual smoke to this fire, huh? Because it seems like it is at least a little bit legit. I don't really have concern at the moment that he's going to miss any regular season time. And I don't really have that much concern that he's going to not be on page with Joe Burrow. He's been his quarterback for 5 years, 6 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Long time. So I feel like they'll be able to get back into it pretty quickly. I do have like a slight concern about a few things, just like, is he in game shape? Like his off-season shape is different than game shape. Like you can kind of see it sometimes too when they do like the locker room stuff. Like guys aren't always, Hugh Jackman and as the Wolverine to make a current topic. They don't look like him, like cut like that.
Yeah.
But like the game shape's different. Like there might be a little bit extra cushion. Who am I to judge? even that shape is better than I'm in. But like they're extremely fit, even if and it's just a little bit different though. I think it's like packing on a little bit to make your way through the season. You're not trying to be super cut. You're just trying to survive and have stamina and endurance to make it the whole way. It's interesting. I think the whole thing's interesting. I'm taking it week by week. I'm surprised, I think is my first reaction is like, I'm surprised he's doing this because it's early. I don't know if Jefferson did this last year because this is the exact same, other than Chase is actually making more money than Jefferson made at the time. This is pretty much the exact same where Jefferson wanted his extension. The Vikings weren't giving it. He had to wait till the next year. That's exactly what's probably happening with the Bengals is he's not going to get it this year. He'll probably get it next year. What I find also very interesting is everybody's favorite offseason slander man, T. Higgins, is out there on his franchise tag. So I feel like, when you go to press the tweet and call, like say whatever you guys say about him, greedy, whatever else, it's like, well, he's there. Like I feel like he took so much slack, so much flack for just, trying to get paid. And he still showed up all the time. So I respect that. I'm not saying that's what Jamar Chase has to do. I think Jamar Chase can do whatever you want. On the other hand, I'm like, what leverage are you pulling? Like, this is, I guess, your only leverage is that you'll threaten to sit out things. That's fine. But I don't know. We'll see. I have no worry about him like missing any regular season time at the moment. just hope he's in good game day shape. Hope that it doesn't mess with him mentally at all, because we saw that with Jesse Bates and T. Higgins in their contract year. Even if this isn't a
Mhm.
contract year for Chase, he probably wants to get the biggest payday possible, break the receiver cap number, not cap, but like AAV numbers, get paid the most ever, etc. So yeah, we'll see. I'm not overly concerned, but it is there is more smoke to the he's unhappy fire than I think we let on throughout the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to just keep an eye on over the next few weeks if he's not showing up, because then, I don't know. I feel like the Cincinnati Bengals. One thing that I've noticed, and we saw with Joe Burrow, a lot of those conversations were private. I do think if there was more, I mean, obviously not participating and showing like, hey, I want my contract. I totally understand, but I don't think Jamar Chase is, you know, at least his side of his agency, they've really put anything out as far as Jamar Chase is extremely unhappy. I don't know. I feel like there could be more smoke that is out there in the national media, and it's just kind of like, look, this is what's happening with Jamar Chase. He wasn't there at camp. What does that look like? Will he be at the joint practice? Did he travel with the team if he's not participating in the preseason game against the Chicago Bears this weekend? I don't know. I'm just kind of just like right in the middle. Like, oh yeah, I really want Jamar Chase to be back out there. I don't blame him because he wants more money, but I also agree it's a little early. I don't really blame
Yeah.
the Bengals for not just saying like, you know what, we will go ahead and extend you now because you want to be extended. I think it would benefit the Bengals because the number's only going to go up for Jamar Chase. But I don't blame them, and I don't blame Jamar. I'm just kind of right in the middle, not freaking out or anything like that, but would love to see him back out there. But understand, he feels the way he does, and he just really we haven't really heard from Jamar at all.
Yeah.
So we don't really know kind of what's going on, but I know he's the best wide receiver on this team, and I really want him out there, and I can't wait until he's back out there, and hopefully, that happens really soon. So that's all I really
I
have for that too.
I think the one thing that really frustrates me is if they extended T. Higgins a year and a half ago or whatever, oh
Yeah,
my God, his extension would probably be done by the time Chase's kicks in with how slow it moves. Like
I
you give him a
I
3 year
agree.
deal and you could have extended that out. Oh man. Oh, I hope
Yeah,
that's not something that you look back and go like, what could have been? Like what you just look back and like we'll get to the preseason stuff and like Yoshi
yeah,
had some good reps and Burton had some good reps and Irwin had a good rep that I feel like nobody talks about when Irwin does something cool. It's like, but I don't care about him. I
he's gonna
do.
make he's gonna
Um,
make like a huge play this season that's gonna matter like the most, and everyone's gonna be
like
like, I've
beating
always
Derek
believed in
Stingley
him.
and down the sideline for a touchdown, 50-yard go
Yeah,
ball. But anyway, I just that's going to be the most frustrating thing to me, and none of it will matter if they win a Super Bowl or whatever else. But that feels like it could be something you look back on, just like we're probably already doing a little bit with Jesse Bates of like
yeah.
maybe you should have paid him. Maybe you should have kept him around. He's really good in Atlanta right now. I guess it wouldn't have
See,
mattered last
I
year
can't,
because
I
Burrow got
can't.
hurt and everything else. I'm
Yeah,
kind of there a little bit of like, man, it's like Dax Hill, better corner. We'll get a whole lot of previews here.
yeah,
But yeah, all I'm saying is just like, man, T. Higgins extension and Jamar Chase's extension, despite being drafted like 1 year apart, I think there would have been basically no overlap. You
no,
would
I
have had
agree.
T. Higgins pretty much ending. Usually you backload those things. So maybe you have the first year of Jamar Chase's extension matching T. Higgins last year or something like that. And then T. Higgins can go hit free agency. That just feels like the missed opportunity to me. And I will be looking back to hurt myself of like, well, what did they spend the money on? Like where was the money? Where did it go? Because now I keep hearing like, oh, that money's there for the Jamar Chase extension. It's like, well, if you're doing that next year, like, why did we care? Why do we care about keeping that money in the bank?
Yeah, no, I agree. I can't look back like that. I really can't. For the Jesse Bates stuff, I think the Bengals, they had a plan. They wanted, the Dax Hill to be the replacement. It didn't
Yeah,
work out.
it's the same plan they had for Whitworth, and it
Yeah.
didn't work.
And that one, I don't know, that one was a terrible plan. But also, yeah, I'm not even looking that far back. But I just think for like the Jesse, not to go too far into the rearview mirror, but like with the Jesse Bates thing, I think ideally the Bengals thought they had a plan. They
Yeah,
honestly had a plan to extend Jesse Bates, and that deal never went through. They got a better offer, and they and they're gone. And good for Jesse Bates. I'm super pumped for him with the Atlanta Falcons. He's balling, but
Good to see him.
I can't look back on that as safety. For me, I always kind of just favor, like, when I think of the core of this team. And yes, just if Jesse was on this defense, that would be absolutely amazing, and I would love it. But I think of Jamar Chase. I think about Joe Burrow. You can look on the other side and say Trey Hendrickson and some of the other defensive players are the guys that you need to play. You need to pay, and I feel like they have. Jamar Chase is next. T. Higgins, I don't know.
I guess if you just would have asked me after the Super Bowl, who were the 5 most important Bengals, and you probably start Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow.
T,
yeah, T. I think Bates would be there, and then for me, Reader could have been in there. So like every year they're losing another member, and maybe you have Trey Hendrickson, just extend it to 6 guys or whatever you want to do to fit that all in there. Like they were top 6, at worst top 10 of like guys that were important on that Super Bowl run. And I think definitely higher than 10. I mean, who are you gonna? I mean, where are you gonna put up there? Like,
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's every year. You lose Jesse Bates, then you lose DJ Reader, and now you're probably losing T. Higgins. So it just goes one after the other. For me personally, of like guys, I was like, man, I think I would have tried harder on this extension, or like given them what they wanted, just figure it out with these guys.
Oh, no, that's fair.
But I'm somebody that's going to look back a little bit. I'm going to look back and be like, did any of their plans work? Because I'm also looking at the DJ Reader one already after watching that preseason game and going like, oh my God, like what is the plan here? Zach Carter at nose tackle? What's going on
with DJ right now?
What's going on with DJ Reader?
Yeah. What's his availability right now?
That's fair. Guess I'm not 100% sure. I thought he was practicing, but maybe not.
So
that's a tough one. I think that one does have more to it, more nuance to it than the Bates one. Bates one was simply they didn't want to match the numbers. DJ was they were nervous about the injury, so like that's one that maybe the Reader doesn't hit the same level. But then what was the plan after? Like what was because they didn't go sign a nose tackle. They keep signing the same type of defensive tackle that can't take on a double team. And like BJ Hill's probably your best at taking on double teams. So you can put BJ Hill in the A gap a bunch. That's not where he's best. He was at his best when he was able to play next to Reader, obviously. And that combo worked really well. Where Reader's taking those snaps. So they don't really have guys that can take on double teams. Like, do you go sign a hired gun? Like I saw that idea. It just feels like the biggest obvious glaring weakness to me. And I don't know their plan. Like the plan on Twitter is like, let's just score more than them. It's like, yeah, that's never failed. Like, yeah, what?
That's not going to work.
Into a game against the 49ers or even the Chiefs. Look at the Chiefs interior offensive line. If all they got to do is just hand the ball off nonstop, that's going to feel brutal as they just go 7 yards, 6 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, the whole way down the field. There's nothing more demoralizing to me, and I think to a lot of coaches and teams, than when you can't stop the run. And I know it's old school. It's everything like, oh, yeah, but we want them to run. Yeah, but you don't want them to run at 6 yards a carry or something like that, where it just feels brutal, where they're picking it up. They're not getting the third down. They're just first, second, the whole way down the field, first, big plays in there too. I'm worried. That is my official worry of this team because I feel pretty high on them in general. But after watching that preseason game, and I know Rankins and Hill, they didn't really play, I don't think. I don't remember them playing. At least they weren't on that drive that they got slaughtered. Yeah, BJ didn't play. I don't remember Rankins on the field either. So, and Henderson didn't play. Like, a lot of stars didn't play. So, like, there's a little bit of that in there. I don't know. I'm a little worried that it could be one of the worst run defenses in the league just because they didn't get a guy that can just eat blocks. And a lot of teams, that guy is like somebody you can't name, but he's there and he's important. But we'll see. There are some hired guns out there that you could call up 37-year-old Linval Joseph and be like, hey, we need somebody to just sit in the A gap and just make sure that these other guys don't get doubled because they're not doing a great job of taking it on. So long extended segment. But
just to kind of move on from that segment, and then we'll kind of recap a little more into the preseason game number 2. I mean, what we want to pull out and then kind of looking forward. But, I think you bring up a really good point just to kind of wrap up this segment. What are the Bengals going to do with all this money? They have the money. They have the money. They haven't extended. And that Evan McPherson, I thought the extension for Evan McPherson would get done. That might be something that they move into next season, off season too. I don't kn I personally, I'd probably just go ahead and get Jamar and Evan done right now, but look, the numbers behind the scenes, I don't know what it looks like. They know they're gonna pay Jamar Chase. I know they're gonna pay Jamar Chase. I know they're gonna pay Evan McPherson, and maybe they wait a year. They're not in a rush. They don't need to be, but it would really kinda save them some money because Jamar could go off even more, and he's gonna get, the bag next year, and they're gonna have to pay him. So, we'll see what that looks like. I look forward to Jamar Chase being back out there. I'll look forward to when Jamar Chase is catching a Joe Burrow touchdown at Paycor Stadium, and hopefully there's a lot of those. And we'll see what happens with the front office decisions when it comes to Jamar Chase. But I think we can both agree. We just kind of feel like, okay, that's where it is right now. Nothing really to panic about. I know
Yep.
everyone kind of feels like it's either you have to panic or everything's going to be just fine. And I think it's going to work itself out. I don't know. That's just how I feel. We'll move on to the preseason game number 2 next for the Cincinnati Bengals. I want to start with Joe Burrow because I know we talked to Charlie last week and he said his expectations have been exceeded by Joe Burrow in the series, and Joe Burrow was out there for enough for me. They scored a touchdown. There was one throw to T. Higgins. It would have been beautiful if he would have caught it. But what did you think overall, besides the run game, about Joe Burrow in this offense?
I mean, I thought the Joe Burrow drive was great. I think Joe Burrow was good. I don't think he was back to his old self, if that
No.
makes sense. Because it felt
Yep.
like there were a couple balls that were just got away from him. And I think he's still figuring out post injury exactly what he can do, or maybe just getting back into the rhythm of everything, shaking off some rust. I know he wants to take a hit. I don't think he did take a hit because the offensive line played pretty well in pass protection. Run blocking, different story.
Mhm.
I think the most interesting thing to me on the Joe Burrow opening drive was the usage of Yosivas, where it was something I brought up like right before the preseason game. I
Yeah.
was like, I've been thinking, what if Yoshi's just like big slot and blocking guys? And that's what they did. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's great. Because I kept seeing him in the slot in practice. And like my first reaction is he seems like an outside guy, he's not like some shifty little guy you put in there. And I think my brain was just in the Tyler Boyd thing, where Tyler Boyd was pretty big, but he wasn't like a big blocker. He was a smart, savvy route runner. And that's not to say that Yoshi's not smart. He went to Princeton. But I think where he wins is like, athleticism, size, speed. And he was okay. I think it was up and down as a blocker. He missed bad on one rep where it kind of ruined the play. But the other one, he was really good. Like he fit up on the safety, blocked him, sealed him off so that you could get a nice run in there. I was impressed. And he also had some nice catches. They pulled him. I think they pulled him after that first drive, right? They treated him like a starter, and Irwin too. So it felt like the first 4 on the depth chart feel pretty solidified to me, and Chase, Higgins, Yoshi, and Irwin in whatever order. Now Burton might work his way up there, but he certainly wasn't there this week. But I think he's moving up. He's definitely moving up. I don't think he'll be behind Kendrick Pryor and Shedrick Jackson this week. I think he'll at least be in that unit, if not higher than them. But anyway, just interesting, the usage of Yosivas, where I was kind of buying in. Like, can he be the super role player? Can he be the guy the Bengals haven't had in a long time? Just a big blocking slot. Just a guy. I mean, that's what Puka Nacua is. I'm not saying Yoshi's about to go for 1,500 yards, but like Puka Nacua gets a lot of his stuff open because he is a menace as a blocker. He pancaked, I think, every defensive back on the Bengals and was, even giving it to some of the linebackers in their game. And what that does is just makes it really difficult when you run play action to know exactly. Puka's running right at me. Let's say Yosivas is running right at me. He's knocked me down. He's beat me up. He's been physical. Do I try to take this block on? And you sit down, because when you go to take on a block, you're not going to be, on your heels. You got to kind of get in there, keep a good base, get ready to take on a block from Yosivas. He just runs by you, because that could be something. Maybe we have something there. And that's kind of what happened on his catch. Not really, but a little bit. Like he did run right at the DB, broke in wide open, able to run down the field. So that was the most interesting thing to me. The Chase Brown thing was interesting until I realized Zach Moss wasn't playing. And I was like, oh, so I don't actually know anything. Like at first I was like, oh, whoa, Chase Brown's just like going to get 80% of the carries this year. No, I don't think so after I think Zach Moss will be. I think I'm still at the 50-50, and I don't think Chase Brown did enough to separate himself, but I don't think the blocking was very good either. So it's give and take. Should have got a first down on that flat route where he stiff armed the guy and then went out of bounds. It's like, well, just hold the ball out and just fall down forward. You almost had it. We can't get the 3rd and 1. This team's not good in short yardage. They quarterback sneak on 2nd and 1 because of that. But yeah, I thought that was the most interesting thing. Higgins looked amazing. Yeah. Like that's what you expect if T. Higgins is out there against backups. And that is the other thing to kind of think about too, is like a lot of guys look good, but it was also the backup unit for the Bucs. Like I don't think those were starters.
No, they were the backups. And I think overall the biggest thing for even Zach Taylor when he talked about Joe Burrow, he just kind of wanted him to get into game mode. Taking those reps. And if you go back to 2021, he was playing just a drive. I want to say a drive, maybe a few more reps in his preseason debut at first, the year after the
He played one
ACL
drive.
injury.
It was three snaps. It was run, drop, pass from Jamar. It was a screen.
Yeah. So this was more. So this was definitely more. And I think overall, he just kind of wanted to get into that game speed. And maybe it's going to feel obviously it's going to feel a little different from the preseason speed to the regular season speed, but just kind of going through those reps mentally will be huge for them. You mentioned Yoshi and Joe Burrow was on a podcast interview, was with Ryan Clark over on the Pivot. It was actually a really good interview. One of Joe Burrow's best ones I've actually ever listened to. And he had talked about the wide receiver for Tyler Boyd. He said, obviously it's a hard replacing a guy like TB. And I know a lot of people want to say, oh man, TB dropped off and he wasn't really the same over the last few years. But Joe Burrow just said it's really going to be a wide receiver by committee for Tyler Boyd's role. So, you're going to see the reps from Jermaine Burton. You're going to see the reps from Yoshi. The good news is Charlie Jones is back on the rehab field. So it'll be good to have him back out there because he was having a really good camp. So they're really just going to rotate a lot of different guys out there. Does feel like Yoshi is going to be their slot guy, but we'll see how it looks overall with this offense. What's kind of crazy about all of it, and these younger guys getting the reps, T. Higgins having the camp of his life. I would say this has been a really good camp for T. Higgins, maybe one of his best. Yeah. When Jamar Chase is out there, if you have all of those wide receiver weapons and options, it could be really fun. And not even you can't forget about the tight end room. Did anybody impact your decision in the tight end room from preseason game number 1?
Apparently Eric all played, but I don't remember him.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a couple snaps. I don't know. I think so. It looks like it's by committee for tight end 1, which is what I've been predicting, where I don't think it's going to be all Gesicki. They did line Gesicki up and run duo and have him try to block the end. Treat him like a blocking sled, ran him into Amarius Mims, and he was never in control on the play. That was also a play Yoshi missed his block, so it wasn't just on Gesicki, but I remember watching that and going like, I think I'm good. Why don't we just treat Gesicki like a big slot? Let's just do that. Let's just let Drew be the inline block defensive ends and whatever else guy. And we can let Gesicki go. He's a big monster mismatch in the slot. We don't need to try this. They probably will. They probably still will. I'm not going to complain until I see in the regular season. But that was the first inkling of like, yeah, they're trying the Gesicki blocking thing, which I get a little bit because it didn't work with Irv Smith last year. Oh, a lot of things didn't, but that didn't. Like they tried that with him too. But 2 years ago, if you would have told me Hayden Hurst was going to be okay at that role, like in the preseason, wouldn't have believed you. And then by week 4, week 5, I'm like, yeah, he's fine. Like it's not good, but it's not terrible either. It's passable, and that's what you're shooting for. So if they could get Gesicki to passable, which I don't think Hurst was as a blocker before that year, now I think he is. I think it was one of those, hey, I want to be on the field 80% of snaps, and if I got to do that, I can't be a liability in a run block situation. So if Gesicki's going to do that, I think he has to be able to not be a liability in run blocking. We'll see. I think we might see it in the first couple of weeks. Yeah. And if it goes poorly, never again, kind of like they've done with the other guys. Or if it goes well, maybe he just stays out there. But my first thought was, looks like Drew and Gesicki are going to split the tight end 1 role, which I'm fine with. Yeah. And if they want to go 12 personnel, since they don't have 3 wide receivers that are like locked in there, even if they are doing a committee thing, and even if you are high, we are high on the idea of the 3rd wide receiver, Yoshi, Vosh, Burton, Irwin, even Charlie Jones, etc. Like it seems fun, but I do think when you had Boyd, it was like, we got to put Boyd out there
Mhm.
80+% of snaps. So without that, it's more of a okay. So some of these Boyd snaps are probably also just going to go to two tight end sets. That a little bit more, even if Gesicki's not like a real tight end. He's bigger than Boyd or anybody else they've got in that position. So can he kind of do some of that stuff? I think that's what I want to see him if he plays in another preseason game is put him and Sample on the field at the same time, have Sample do the hard blocking stuff in line and put Gesicki off the ball. Let's see if he can at least just, sift block across the formation and just survive against whoever on the backside or, go block a safety, something that like you ask wide receivers to do sometimes. Let's see if that can happen because that'll at least help a little bit. That's what Kelsey does. Like they don't ask
Yeah.
Kelsey to put his hand in the dirt and take on Sam Hubbard. That's what they have the belldozer for.
That's
They
why a
say,
lot of people forget. Like, I always think of Travis Kelce as more of Patrick Mahomes' receiver option. Like, he's one of their wide receivers.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And Kelsey at this point is just the super smart. It might not always seem that way, but I remember that play against Bates. Bates had that play killed, and he gets killed for this on Twitter. He read it out perfectly. If Kelsey
Mhm.
just ran the route like it was on the playbook, play's dead. Maybe Mahomes scrambles for a couple of yards. Says a touchdown because just such a good understanding of his leverage,
Ugh.
ability to sit down, and just that chemistry with Mahomes of just like, okay, just throw this inside. Like I know I'm running a corner route. I'm just gonna sit and you could throw this inside and I'll box him out. It's like, well, what do you do in that situation? So I wonder if Gesicki can figure it like that'd be huge if you could just like be, hey, they've got this beat and him and Burrow's got the connection of like, I'm just gonna sit it. I'm just gonna sit down, just throw it. So I'm big. I'm big. I'll catch this. That's his biggest strength is his ability to make contested catches, big, dunk on guys. So
Man, that whole
I think
play
that's what
just
I'm looking for on
relived in
offense.
my head. That whole Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes play just like
Every
relived.
play relives in this set. This is an encyclopedia of the past 4 years of Bengals plays in here.
I don't need to see that again. I can just remember the moment and just I know everybody they were all upset at Jesse Bates for it. So we'll move
It was
on
a what
from
could you
that.
do situation to me. It was like, yeah, I guess like maybe the best safety in the past 5 years would be able to just see what's happening and somehow make a play there. Where Bates has been his best is not, breaking up contested catches against big tight ends. He's great at getting himself in position, getting interceptions,
Yeah.
reading everything out, which he did. It was just he wasn't able to, size wise match up with Kelsey, which is fine. Like not every safety can. So I think we should at least hit the defense a little bit.
Yeah, let's hit the defense before we move on to a little bit of training camp notes and then preseason game number 2. Tell me everything about the defense. Let's start with Dax Hill.
Okay. Better at corner than I expected, honestly. And outside corner, not slot, not where every draft nerd was pushing the glass up. This is exactly what I predicted. He's a slot corner. He didn't play slot at all. He was playing outside. And I thought he was pretty
Well,
good. Like, I'll eat crow, sure. And it seemed like the Bengals staff also thought Turner was better throughout the entire offseason. And
mm-hmm.
then this game hit. They're both on the field. Looked like Dax was better. And
That's
I'm man
great.
enough to admit that. Yeah, that's fine. I think they both have to play in this game. Like I still view this as a true battle. Um, so I still view this as a true battle. I think they should both play in the next game. And then if Dax wins again, I think it's probably his job. But if you get a Turner win, then what happens there? It'll be interesting. I think both of them, whoever wins the job, probably a little bit of a shorter leash. You want to have them build up confidence, but you don't want to just leave them out there to get fried.
I'm going to have you pick 2 more defensive players just that you thought, okay, they had a pretty good game 1.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just combine the defensive ends. I thought Murphy and Osai were both good. I thought they're both getting some pressure. I don't think the interior was good and made up for that. But another, I don't know how we're going to leave this without Muma Jongmeta. I think
We should just
he
call
looked
him Mo.
pretty. Muma, yeah, looked pretty good. Looked pretty good. I was like, yeah, this guy would make my roster because he's high effort. That's how you get so many tackles in those games. That's what Marcus Bailey did in that one game, I think, right? Like that was it Marcus
Oh,
Bailey who
man.
had like 17 tackles, or was that Clay Johnson? I can't even remember.
I remember.
But one of them made the roster basically off of like, oh my goodness, this guy was making every tackle in that preseason game. I think that was Young Meta Muma in this game. I'm worried a little about the long speed. There was one play that was like, ooh, I don't know if he could be a starting line. But it's like he's an undrafted free agent. If he's just a role player, he's a role player. He's kind of in the build of like a Jawan Bentley, very lower end Dante Hightower, just that archetype of big bruising linebacker that can blitz, blow up running backs, and when he gets singled up against them, do some fun stuff as a blitzer and pass protection, but also just an awesome run stuffer, guy that can really take on blocks. And I was surprised he was not 250 pounds. He is under 230 at the combine. He's 229. That was shocking me. Maybe it was just the way he was playing, but he looks so strong, so stout, and just taking on. He was taking offensive linemen, just discarding them for the most part. I think that was really impressive. So I'm excited to see a little bit more of his game as well.
All right, so we're moving on to game 2. Zach Taylor said no starters are going to play in that game, but I think the exception would be Dax Hill. We'll see
Yep,
probably a
Dax
few
Hill,
more reps
DJ
from
Turner.
him. Yep,
I think
and you
Dax Hill,
need to.
DJ Turner. They should be the starting corners in the first quarter. I think that's how I would do it. I don't think I would give the job to Dax off one preseason game. I don't think it's a big enough sample size, especially if you had Turner winning the job going in, because it seemed like the entire time they were leaning Turner, and that preseason game flipped them. I think Jordan Battle, interesting. It didn't look like he was close to starting, and he didn't see the field as a third safety. I thought that was surprising. So I'm going to watch for that. Like, does he start the preseason game without the starters, or are they really that enamored with was it Dejon Anthony? I think was the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was the one that played over him when they went to a 3 safety set. So that's interesting. Want to see Murphy Osai have another good game. Want to see Jenkins play better. I don't think it was terrible, but something that's interesting was there's a training camp clip. I'm going to write it. This will be my article. It's going to be about Jenkins, and this is kind of the base of it. There's a training camp clip with Marion Hobby where he crosses over his feet, and Hobby's like, no, don't cross over your feet. Keep your base. And it has him redo the rep. He keeps his base. He looks much stronger. Entire preseason game, he's crossing over his feet. And it's just one of those things of like, maybe I just didn't notice this in Michigan enough, but it kind of looked like, oh, okay, like there's a real technical issue here that could be fixed. So that's what I'll be looking for that a bit too. Just like, can Jenkins just keep the wide base, hands, etc., still have some range and play strong? I don't expect him to be dominant against double teams. He never was. And that could also that's a little bit technical thing in there, but it's also like I think he was like 300 on the dot, somewhere around there. So he's not another guy that's like, he's not a guy that should be playing double teams the whole game, even if he's a good run defender. I'm looking for that. I think offensively, yeah, I'll look for when they say no starters, is Yoshi Voss or Irwin out there, or without Jamar Chase, are they considered starters? Yeah. So, and then is Burton out there with the ones basically, or well, I guess the twos since there's no starters. He'll be out there, I assume. I don't think.
Yeah, I think you put him more on the. I think you put him out on the one side, and I think the biggest thing with Jermaine Burton, because a lot of people question like, why is he in the game so late? They forgot that he was injured for a few training camps.
Yeah, from what I heard, he didn't. Yeah, he didn't have the offense yet, and that's understandable when you miss some training camp as a rookie.
So I think they put him in a really good spot to just get those reps in a preseason game, and I'm still expecting him to play kind of more of a first half look. Zach Taylor said, he's not counting out Joe Burrow playing maybe in the third game. I think that Joe should not. I don't want to see Joe take the field until regular season. To be honest with you.
So they're treating the third game like the old third game, where the third game used to be like where you'd see the starters. I thought everybody treated it like the fourth game anymore, where like you don't see anybody besides position battles.
I hope he changes his mind. It wasn't anything 100%. It was just like, hey, I'm not taking anything off the table with Joe Burrow playing in the third one. But I really hope it's more like, yep, it's off the table, and we're just gonna let him watch on the sidelines. So we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, offensively, I think the wide receiver is definitely something to keep an eye on. Josh Newton, he's been fun.
Oh yeah, should have mentioned him. He gave a big catch, but then also made that awesome interception. That was such a great rep from positional maintenance and just high pointing the ball, etc. So yeah, I'm excited to see some more Newton. Would that be the third corner? And I wonder if did they put him in the slot? I don't remember. I think they did put him in the slot in that game. Like that's where he made his interception. It was on an out route from number 2.
Let me ask you this. This did not get too deep into the future of these position battles and what everything's going to look like week 1, because we still have a few weeks to talk about that. But if you were to tell me, say Geno Stone, Von Bell live up to enough when it comes to the safety room right now, your cornerback room is going to be Cam Taylor-Britt, Dax Hill, and then you have DJ Turner, just in case, you need to make that switch with him and Dax. How do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10 right now with just what we have from training camp. And it's not a whole lot because it's training camp and one preseason game. How you feel about the secondary compared to what we saw last year?
Oh, much. I think much. I think better than last year. I
Yeah.
teeter on the much. I think that is the. It's kind of like one of those things like that's your X factor, but it's kind of like one of those like how can he be solid? Like that second outside corner job. Can he be solid? That's where like the X factor of the secondary is I feel pretty confident about what Gino and Vaughn will be. I think, and I feel pretty good about what Cam Taylor-Britt and Mike Hilton will be. Got no idea on that second outside corner. Like, it looks like DJ Turner is still a great practice player, but just lack
Mhm.
of length, etc., shows up sometimes in these games. And Dax Hill, to me, is still a bit of an unknown, even with a good preseason game. So that's where it's like an X factor. I do think that I feel better, but I don't know if I go like, oh, much better, just because I don't know how I feel yet about those two.
Well, preseason game number 2 is on the way, and I'm so pumped because the Cincinnati Bengals have a joint practice on Thursday versus the Chicago Bears, so they'll get a few more reps before the game on Saturday afternoon, a 1 p.m. kickoff. We love that. Make sure you follow Mike. He's going to have a really great piece. He just mentioned it on the podcast over on Bengals_Sands. All Bengals. Check his work out all season long. Make sure you follow me at Alan Diaz Patterson. And thank you for listening, too. It's always game day in Cincinnati.